cases today. Formal rules of evidence do not apply, but fundamental due process shall be observed. Everyone who has a case today will have an opportunity to present testimony. You may present evidence and/or witnesses to testify on your behalf. There is no public comment portion. You must be a respondent or be called as a witness in order to speak on a specific case. Everything today is being recorded, and all testimony will be under oath. When you are sworn in, please provide your current mailing address so any orders get to the correct address. The way we do this is the city will present its case first, and information will be displayed up on the screen. Documents may be provided by the city as evidence. The city's PowerPoint presentation will be entered into evidence unless any objections are made. After the evidence, I will make a ruling. That ruling will be reduced to writing and mailed to you. We will go ahead and swear in the witnesses, and if you are presenting your case today or any witnesses, please go ahead and rise and be sworn in as well. Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you present shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? First case.
First case is 20-12. Respondent Homes, LLC. The first case is 20-12. Hispaniola Homes, LLC, A&N Financial, LLC, 110 Chapel Lane. Frank Lewis.
Okay, violation address 110 Chapel Lane, Titusville, Florida, 32780, tax ID 21-35-31-50-1-26. Mail to address P.O. Box 246148, Pembroke Pines, Florida, 33024. Violation charges are City of Titusville Code of Ordinances, the International Property Maintenance Code, Section 6-109, subsection 301.3, vacant structures and land, subsection 304.1, general interior, section 305.1, general interior. And at this time, I'd like to see.
Is that reversed?
Ma'am? Yes, ma'am. 304.1 general exterior and 305.1 general interior. I'd also like to submit a notice of posting hearing in evidence.
Okay. Now this is going to be the notice of posting and notice of
Hearing.
for today's
Yes,
hearing,
ma'am.
correct? Because this was a continued case. Okay.
Okay. All right. This case was heard by the board at the October 12th, 2020 board meeting. The board ordered a respondent who was present at the meeting to correct a violation on or before January 11th, 2020. If the violations were not corrected by this date, a subsequent hearing will be held and a fine shall be imposed in the amount of $50 per day per violation on January 12th, 2021. The board assessed cost in the amount of $138.85. And that is as it sits today.
That's all there is.
And that is basically it. They do have a representative here present.
Okay. And then their compliance date was, what was their compliance date?
Is it 12 January? January 11th. This should be 11th.
So this is a Massey?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
This case was previously continued to allow the property owner opportunity to obtain a permit that he had been working on and had encountered roadblocks. The Code Enforcement Board had recommended a certain period of time leading up to today. The January Code Enforcement Board was the date of compliance scheduled for this particular property. And the property owner has not yet obtained that property permit, but has worked diligently toward obtaining it. He is here, and I would recommend that additional time be granted for the owner to obtain that property permit for the work to be done for the rehab to this structure, based on the amount of comments that have been received and responded to. Again, the owner is here and is going to explain the status of the engineering comments that he is anticipating to respond to today, the date of compliance. Frank, do you have anything else to add?
No.
Okay. So none of the violations have come into compliance?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
All of the violations are tied to this single permit, though. Is that correct, Frank?
Yes, that's correct. Property was the subject of a fire.
And what's the issue with obtaining the permit, to your knowledge?
The property owners have submitted several documents to support. The city has required some more documentation. Supposedly, I understand, like I said, they have a representative here that can
Right.
go a little more detail about that. But I understand they also submitted some more documents today.
Okay. So the city's relying on the respondent to provide the position on the status of the permit?
Yes, that was required. There were some conditions that the building official required further clarification on, some engineering analysis.
Okay.
The city was expecting that a permit would be issued by the state. However, due to the comments and the routing and the workload of the building department, I understand that they have greater volume than is typical, which is why the city is willing to allow for more time for this permit to be issued.
And is it the city's position that the violations could not have been cured by the January 12th, 21 date
Yes, because the owner's waiting on this permit for the work to be
because of the permit processing?
correct.
Okay, I'll go ahead and hear from the owner's representative. If you could go ahead and give me your name and your address.
Reynaldo Moya, address P.O. Box 246, 147, Pembroke Pines, Florida, 33024.
Okay.
So from the beginning, they require us to submit a whole bunch of document. We did submit it, the city, the building department, sorry. They came back asking for us to submit 24 more items, which involve engineering, plumbing, AC contractor, plumbing contractors, general contractors. We submitted everything. Then they came back with 3 more items that we are recently submitted to, or we have 1 more item left, which is going to get submitted this afternoon. But the whole process, has taken a little bit longer than we anticipated
Okay.
in terms of, response, us responding and back and forth. And we're kind of new to this city. We usually work in South Florida, and
So the violations of vacant structure and land, exterior maintenance, general interior maintenance.
the maintenance parts, in terms of keeping up with the property, we have been cutting the grass, make sure it looks the way that it should look. But we cannot do any work because we need a permit, not even demolishing anything like that, because we need a permit. I have all the general contractor, all the workers ready to work on the house, but unfortunately, I cannot even touch the house.
Okay. Okay.
I have the trust paid for and everything since October of last year, and they're just sitting there on the trust company waiting for it to be delivered to be installed. But like I say, I cannot even start anything.
So have you gotten all the documents in
have.
at this point?
At this point, I just need one more document. They're in the house right now, doing the drawing for the AC vents, which they require, and I should have everything by this afternoon.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
And the city's okay with
Yes, ma'am.
how much additional?
2 weeks. 2 weeks should be sufficient based on their caseload. And if he gets them all in today, we'll,
I think 2 weeks is what we've discussed would be necessary for the building department to issue the permit based on having to review additional engineering. So based on 2 weeks needed for the permit to issue, that's a guess that they're going to be able to produce that. I think 1 month would be a minimum necessary to do the work.
So the next meeting is
February 8th.
February 11th
11th?
is the next meeting.
Okay.
That calendar's wrong. Okay. February 8th is the next meeting, okay.
I'm gonna get in the calendar, that was the 2019.
Okay. Wrong. Okay, so if we have it for February 7th as a as a new compliance date, that would be acceptable to the city?
Yes,
To
ma'am.
a compliance date in terms of, and compliance would mean obtaining the permit,
Yes, ma'am. It actually issued.
issuing the permit.
Yes, ma'am.
And getting the permit issued is going to address the 3 violations.
Yes, ma'am. That would take care of all 3.
Okay, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else from either party? All right,
I would just ask the respondent, how long after you get the permit will it take you to do the work on this property?
I would say it's less than 60 days.
Okay.
Because we need to obviously ask for inspections and stuff. I don't know how much workload you guys have, so, you know, we can do the housing within a month, but I know we have to ask for inspections and stuff like that, so I don't know the city schedule right now, so.
well,
I'm not
I mean,
sure
that's
that-
the issue.
I'm not sure that
is
February would be a reasonable date to get the work done for
That-
these 3 violations.
Yeah, I mean, getting a permit issued and actually bringing the violations into compliance are 2 different things. So getting the permit issued doesn't really satisfy the violations. So why don't we go ahead and give him,
I would suggest until the March meeting would be more reasonable.
which would be what date?
The 8th of March is the second Monday.
Okay. March 8th, if we modified the previous order to give you until March 8th, and giving you until March 8th to not only obtain the permit, but to complete the work to satisfy these 3 violations, do you think that's within the
Yes,
realm of reason to get
I
that
think
all
so.
done?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
As long as, again, the inspection goes smoothly, everything doesn't, but that's a reasonable time.
We would have another meeting because this meeting is essentially going to extend the date that was provided in the previous order to the March 8th meeting.
Okay.
Of course, if you come into complete compliance, we may not even need to. It's up to the city if they want to bring it back to me just to confirm compliance. That's up to the city. But what I'm going to go ahead and do is order that the previous order amend the compliance date of January 12, 2021 to March 2021. And all other conditions and terms of the previous order will remain the same.
Okay.
You have any questions?
No, that's it.
Okay.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
We don't do that very often, and I don't like to do that. I don't like to change the compliance date, but it seems that it's kind of, because it's kind of on the city side too, and because COVID has made the world such a strange place, I
That's
don't
what
have an
understand,
issue
too.
amending the compliance date.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
There is one additional respondent in the audience for a case that's further ahead in your agenda, if you'd like to hear her case next.
I do prefer to.
The case is initial hearing number 21-01 for Catherine Birmingham at 35 North Hilltop Drive. And Officer Hutchings will take the podium for this particular case.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Let's see here. All right. I'm obviously here to present case number 21-01 with the respondent of Catherine Birmingham, the violation address being 35 North Hilltop Drive. And what I'd like to do before we get too far into it is go ahead and submit for evidence the first being the affidavit for the notice of violation, notice of hearing being the second, and the third being the cost recovery.
Thank you. Exhibit 1 will be the affidavit and notice of violation. Exhibit 2 will be the affidavit and
Of the
notice-
hearing
notice of hearing, and Exhibit 3
should be the cost recovery.
will be the cost recovery
Yes, ma'am.
statement in the amount of $104.39,
Yes.
correct? I think I forgot to pass these down. This is the notice. Okay.
All right. The mailing address is also 35 North Hilltop Drive, Titusville, Florida, 32796. The violations, when initially cited, were inoperative vehicle, overgrowth, and unlicensed vehicles. What the owner has done is went ahead, so we need to go ahead and remove, which has come into compliance when I went and looked at it this morning, is the overgrowth.
Okay.
She's gone by there and went ahead and mowed the yard. And the quick narrative, upon initial inspection, found both overgrowth and excessive code allowance along with the untagged vehicle that appeared to be inoperable, along with a large amount of items and debris throughout the property frontage. Or not. There we go. The initial inspection was actually performed at 7/6 of, I'm sorry, that should be obviously 2020. My error, where the NOV was posted. Notice to respondents was 7/8 of 2020, mailed, certified, delivered, and signed for on 7/11 of 2020. Notice of hearings, 12/21, 2020, posted to City Hall and on the property where the violation exists. Certified mail was mailed on 12/9. According to tracking, was delivered on 12/14, though not in person, signed by individual making the delivery, was COVID-19 and dropped off at the address.
What does that mean?
That would have been the post office. From what I'm assuming, which is again just an assumption, is that if the deliverer does not feel safe to go to a door or come into person, I have not had a chance to check with the postmaster whether or not that's an acceptable delivery for certified. Dates given to comply were on, original date was 7/21 of 2020, though it was given a lengthy extension. Had seen some of the items and the debris had started to be removed, and attempted to cut the grass at one point in time, and so I took upon myself to go ahead and give the extension. The individual who owns the property works a large amount of hours, is not home very often, so. And at the time, I had not had any contact with the owner. Previous cases that were with this property, I had contact. Follow-up inspections were on 12/1/2020 and this morning. The results of the inspection, owner has not tagged vehicle or removed debris from the front yard. And the city code defined 1373 inoperative vehicle, time limitation for deposition, basically cannot have the untagged vehicle, unregistered vehicle within the property. And the public nuisance with regards to 1326 refers to the overgrowth in excess of the 12 inches.
But that's complied, right?
That is in compliance.
Okay.
And the machinery parts, scrap lumber are the items that have been stored throughout the frontage of the property. This was the posting for the NOV. This was the expired tag on the truck that is sitting in the driveway. This is a picture of the overgrowth. And a picture of the items that are throughout the frontage. There's another clearer picture further on into the presentation.
Okay.
This is the posting for the magistrate. And that has now been added prior to the initially started seeing the homeowner starting to clean up, and during the last inspection on 1/6, well, earlier on the 12/1, had started noticing an increase of items within the frontage. This picture was taken obviously last week at 1/6/2000, and that's another typo on my part. Should be 1/6/2021. I apologize. And where it was just a simple expired tag, the tag has been removed from the vehicle. And the recommendation based on the testimony and presented in the hearing case 21-01 is to determine that the respondent is Catherine A. Birmingham, the owner, record property located at 35 North Hilltop, located in Titusville, Florida, as determined by the property appraiser's record, in possession or control of the property and in violation of Titusville Code Ordinance Section 1373, 1326, and 1223, which the overgrowth has already been taken care of. Excuse me. And it is further recommended the magistrate order the respondent to correct the violation before 2/8/2021 to comply. In order to correct the violation, must remove the inoperable vehicle. Again, the overgrowth has already been taken care of, and the removal, which it should also read the removal of the items and debris within the frontage of the property. Order the respondent be assessed the administrative cost of the amount of $104.39. If the respondent does not comply within 2/8/2021, A fine of $25 per violation per day should be imposed for each day of the violation. And the homeowner is here today to speak on her behalf.
Have there been previous code violations at this property?
Yes.
What
Yes,
kind?
the last one had almost went to code board, but she managed to come into compliance just before code board.
The same type of violations? The debris, junk and debris in the
Yes,
yard?
ma'am.
Okay. Recently, would you say?
No, it's been a while. It had stayed clear of debris and the yard had been kept up, the vehicle was registered. It wasn't until just recently, probably within the past, well, since July, it started accumulating again.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And the owner is present?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, would you like to come and say something? If you would go ahead and give me your name and your
It's
address.
Catherine Birmingham, 35 North Hilltop, 32796.
Okay.
Well, I wanted to, I don't know if I have to get rid of my truck. I don't really want to. I don't have anywhere else to put it. If I can put a tag on it, I can do that. I'm not going to tell you the story of the tag because that has, I don't want to incriminate family members, but somebody, one of my relatives took it off so he could use it to drive places. But anyway, I'd like to just get a lost tag and put another tag on it. I can't do that to my for my truck.
I can't tell you that. All I can tell you is that it is in violation as it exists.
Okay, okay.
So you either need to remove it or get a tag for it.
Okay, well, I'm definitely going to get a tag for it. And I'm going to get rid of all that stuff, and I've already started, actually. I'm probably about 50, I'd say 60% through it.
So the city has given a recommendation of bringing everything into compliance by February 8th.
Yeah, I can do that.
And then if that's not done by the 8th, then a daily fine will start to run,
Right.
which would be about $50 per day based on their recommendation. My inclination would be to bump that up a little bit because you do have prior violations. So,
Okay,
well, although they haven't come before, but they're asking for $25 per day per violation. My inclination is I'm going to bump that up a little bit because of, and the length of time it has taken to come here today to get these taken care of.
okay.
But if you can get it all done before next month, then there won't be any daily fine at all.
The 8th is, okay,
The 8th of February.
okay.
So, and then they are also asking for costs, which they can do because they incur administrative costs, but what, is there a reason why it's taking so long to get this all taken care of?
Well, it's just me, and it sometimes, which is just me there, but it takes a bit. I have to, I didn't even have a lawnmower, and I had to get a lawnmower and do all those things, so.
Yeah,
I have family members to help me, but
Okay.
sometimes they're not available.
okay. Well, all right, anything else you want to add?
No, I think that's it.
Okay. Anything else from the city? Nope. All right. I will go ahead and adopt the recommendation of the city, in this case, finding the 2 violations of section 12-23 and 13-73. But because of the length of time it has taken and the prior violations, I'm going to assess $50 per day per violation if the property does not come into compliance by February 8th,
Okay.
2021. But I'm going to reserve costs,
thank
meaning I won't impose those costs of $104.39 at this time.
Okay.
If you can get that all cleaned up and get rid of that truck or else get it tagged by February 8th, 2021, there won't be any administrative costs imposed. So please,
Now, do I need to call when I?
yes,
Okay.
call
Call Ken? Okay.
the code officer
Okay.
and make sure that even if you're having difficulties, please keep him informed of your progress.
All right.
And then we'll get an order in the mail out to you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? Okay, next.
All right, this is the Massey hearing, obviously, for case number 20-46. The respondent, Malates Antonio, and the same Patty. I'm not going to attempt to try to pronounce that last name. The violation, again, was at 504 Short Street, Titusville, Florida, 32780, and mailed to 1853 Dufferin, Toronto, Ontario, Canada. The violations, which are still, as of last week, were inoperable vehicle and and the weed international property maintenance 302.4, and that was the weeds in excess of 12 inches. The case was originally heard by a special magistrate December 14, 2020. Code enforcement hearing, the special magistrate ordered the respondent, who was not present at the hearings, to correct the violation on or before January 11, 2021. And if the violation is not corrected by this date, the subsequent hearing will be held and the fine shall be imposed in the amount of $25 per day starting on January 12, 2021. The special magistrate assessed the cost of $104.39. What I'd like to do is submit in for evidence Exhibit 1, and that being the affidavit notice of hearing.
For today's hearing, correct? All right, thank you. I'll accept that into evidence.
This is a photo as of, for the posting. Actually, this was the last for the I apologize, from last week, to show that the property is still not in compliance with the overgrowth and the abandoned expired tag vehicle sitting in the background.
So the overgrowth is still there, the abandoned vehicle is still there.
Correct.
And the property maintenance?
Was the weeds in excess of the 12 inches.
Oh, okay, yeah, yep. Okay. All right, I'll go ahead and find it is in non-compliance and impose the fine of $25 per day per violation and assess the city's cost of $104.39.
Thank you.
Next. And I should also say that there's no one present on that case here today, correct?
No, ma'am.
No one present on that case
No, ma'am.
here today, correct?
So this is the Massey hearing for code case 20-49. The respondent was Lorraine Louise Silvers. The violation address was 2280 Beechwood Court, Titusville, Florida 32780. I have for you the affidavit of the notice of the Massey hearing for evidence. Thank you. I'll accept that into evidence. So the violation was section 13-26 for the public nuisance. The case was originally heard by the special magistrate at the December 14th, 2020 code enforcement hearing. The special magistrate ordered the respondent, who was not present and is not present today, to correct the violations on or before December 28th, 2020. The violations were not corrected by the state, then a subsequent hearing would be held and fine to be imposed in the amount of $250 per day starting December 29th, 2020. Also, the assessed the cost of $122 even. So I did a follow-up inspection on December 29th, 2020. Though there was some organizing of items in the front yard, there was really no reduction of the amount of materials in the front yard. I also did a follow-up inspection last week where it does appear that we have additional items that were brought into the area, onto the property and into the area right in front of the driveway on Beechwood Court. Again, that's looking up towards the front of the house on January 6th.
Would you say that the items are still blocking the entry?
Yes. Mainly, all they did was organize the front section so you can see more grass. And this is just the notice of hearing for the Massey hearing posted on the property.
Okay. Clearly, it's still in violation. I'll go ahead and find that it has not come into compliance with the previous order, and the daily fine of $250 will be imposed as of December 29, 2020, and the city's cost of prosecution shall be imposed in the amount of $122. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we have the Massey hearing for code case, or hearing case 20-50. This is for 3645 Barna. While they're pulling that up, I do have an affidavit for the notice of hearing for the Massey hearing today for evidence for you.
Thank you. It will be accepted into evidence.
So here we go. So the violation address was 3645 Barna Avenue, Unit 23C in Titusville, Florida. The violation sections were from the Property Maintenance Code 6-109, subsection 30413, which is for the windows, and also subsection 305.1, which is for general interior maintenance. The case was originally heard by the special magistrate on December 14th, 2020. The special magistrate ordered the respondent who was present at the hearing to correct the violation on or before January 8th, 2021. And if the violation was not corrected by the state, a subsequent hearing shall be held and a fine imposed in the amount of $25 for each violation per day, starting on January 9th. Special magistrate reserved the cost in the amount of $192.44. All right, I conducted a follow-up inspection on January 6th and again this morning. This is the window on the west side of the unit. The glass is still broken, has not been boarded up or corrected. This is the window on the north end of the unit, again, still missing glazing, still inoperable. And they have not started cleanup inside the unit.
As far as you can see from looking inside.
Yes, ma'am.
What you can obviously see, it's open and obvious
It's
to any
open-
person.
It's open to anyone walking by.
Have you had any contact with either lady who was here at the last hearing?
No, ma'am, no contact. A neighbor, while I was on site this morning, said they had seen the daughter who was here at the last hearing for about 2 hours last weekend, but she was there and then gone rather quickly.
Okay, anything else?
No, ma'am.
Okay. I will find that the property did not come into compliance. I will impose the fine in the amount of $25 per day per violation, commencing January 9, 2021, and I will go ahead and impose the costs, administrative costs, in the amount of $192.44.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am, 20-53 was in compliance.
Yes, and I saw that you had already prepared a notice of compliance, so
Yes, ma'am.
do you need me to do an order of compliance? Okay.
No, we're good.
There we go. All right. So here for the 2047, it's going to be the CHARAL Titusville LLC, Prosper Titusville LLC, and AH Titusville LLC. I've got the violation hearing and concert coverage. And I also printed out the codes.
Great. Okay, so Exhibit 1 will be the
Slide.
affidavit and notice of violation. Exhibit 2 will be the affidavit and notice of hearing for today. Exhibit 3 will be the cost recovery statement in the amount of $122 even. And I assume the codes are just for my enjoyment.
Ma'am, if I would, Inspector Mac changed it from the time we posted. As in your agenda, you should see all 6 were there.
I see 6.
So you need to,
Yes, we're just, for several of them, number, let's see, number, yeah, 1. So number 1, the means of egress reliability. Number 3, the sprinkler system servicing. 4, smoke alarms. And 5, the locks, latches, and alarm devices. We're going to go ahead and just drop those.
So which ones again? 1,
Number 1,
3,
number 3,
4?
number 4, and number 5.
Okay.
So the only 2 I'm going to be pursuing now are going to be number 2, the fire alarm servicing, and then the fire department access.
Okay, so that's NFPA 72-10.2.1 and NFPA 1-18.2.
Yes, and for the 72, that should actually be 14.2, not 10.2. That was a mistake on my part.
72-14.2.
Yes, so I gave you the correct code language for the 14.2. I had updated them a couple months ago, and I must have missed that one. So,
Okay.
My mistake. So this is more commonly known as the Dream Space Coast Apartments. Basically, what had happened initially, they did not have a business tax receipt, so we went to do the licensing inspection, found all these issues. Since that date, they have started a remodel, which is why I'm dropping off several of those, because now that they're under construction, those issues are allowed because it's an open construction site. It's not actually an occupied apartment building. However, they do still need to maintain those last 2 on there, the fire alarm servicing and the fire department access. Those would apply whether people are living there actively or not.
Okay, let me take a look at your notice of violation.
Yes.
So the correct one should be 72-14.2.1 fire alarm servicing.
Yes. The NFP 1-18.2 is correct in there. Oh, and then I think the city code one is for the next one of mine. So that was, should have held that one off.
And they're not here today, correct?
No. We did speak with them this morning, though, so that was my last check-in with them.
And the notice of hearing also doesn't cite the correct 72-14.2.
Right.
But you do cite, it does say fire alarm servicing, have a licensed contractor service the fire alarm.
Yes.
And that's the correct.
Yes, it was just the
Title.
number that a few months ago I had to redo all the code numbers because the new code came out. So I was updating them, and I just missed that one. Is the only thing I can.
So did it use, was it previously 10? Or
I would assume so. From what I know, they haven't been updated for a while, so I went through and tried to update all of them as best I could.
okay. Okay, go ahead.
All right, so what the main issue is for the fire alarm servicing, the building is equipped with a fire alarm that is required to be inspected on an annual basis. From what I do recall, they did get the inspection completed. However, there were issues still on the panel, so those issues would need to be resolved. We also discovered that the elevator did not have a functioning fire recall function. So in a multi-story building with a fire alarm, when the alarm activates, the alarm should return to the first floor and remain there for the fire department to use in an emergency. Their elevator is not, either elevator is not equipped with that system, so it was still functioning as a normal elevator, which is a hazard for our personnel because it could inadvertently open on the fire floor and allow smoke and fire into the cabin with them, or the occupants could use it and we couldn't, so it would slow time to the fire floor. So those are both issues with the fire alarm that would need to be resolved for that violation to be cleared on our end. When last I spoke to them, the elevator company was just not available. They haven't gotten any date from them, and I haven't heard from them. When we stopped by this morning, the fire alarm, which has had numerous false alarms due to the construction, in an attempt to stop the false alarms, what they did was disconnect the power to it and unplug the batteries, which is not advisable. So, yeah, at this point, I'm not sure if there actually is power to the system. They were going to have an electrician come in and make sure that all of the electrical lines to it were still good. So that just kind of adds another layer onto the fire alarm. It needs to have power, it needs to have all of the troubles and problems with it addressed, and then the elevator needs to function appropriately. So that would be all wrapped up in the fire alarm section. Continuing on to the fire department access. The building, as it has both a fire alarm and a new sprinkler system, we do require them to have a Knox box on the exterior of the building, which they do. However, there are no keys inside of it. So that would be used for our personnel to unlock the doors, be able to gain access without having to rip the doors down in the case of an after-hours call. So we had previously spoken to them about getting keys. They still have not. Inside of that as well, with the elevator requires a key to operate during fire service. That key is not in that box, and it is not a generic fire elevator key. It's one that is keyed specifically for their elevator. So without them providing it to us, we would never be able to use the elevator anyway. So they would either need to provide us a new key or have it rekeyed to one of the other, either the state fire key or something that's more generic that we would have access to.
Okay.
So those are really the only two remaining issues. All the other ones are construction-based, and we've just decided to drop those at this time due to the fact that they are currently remodeling the building. I think that was all of those. So the initial inspection was in August, noted the violations, brought it to their attention. That was when we went out for the initial licensing inspection. Since then, we've kind of had back and forth with them, but due to the reconstruction efforts on the building, it's kind of hit and miss when we're talking to them. So we sent the certified mail out October 14th. It was signed on the 29th, and the hearing was posted on November 11th of last year. We continued it last month because they told me that they needed a little bit more time and that they would have those three issues addressed, and they don't. We stopped by this morning, and none of those issues had been addressed. They didn't have any dates for me. They didn't have any kind of contact info. So we just decided to go ahead and proceed with the case. So we've had follow-up inspections multiple times, September 2nd, September 25th, October 12th and 23rd, and then the 23rd of November, 11th of December, and then this morning. And like I said, the violations still remain. I can skip past those, unless you'd like me to leave them on there. Those are the
Go ahead.
same ones that I gave you. So based on the testimony and evidence in this case, CHARAL Titusville LLC are the owners of record of the property located at 2825 South Washington Avenue, and they are at this point in violation of NFPA 7214.2 and NFPA 118.2 for the fire alarm and the fire department access. We wanted them to correct it before today, so really that would end up being next month. What they would need to do is have a licensed contractor service the fire alarm, make any corrections needed to correct the system, and then they would have to have an elevator technician come out and work with the fire alarm contractor to ensure that those two systems function correctly together. We would ask that the administrative cost of 122 even be assessed, and if they do not comply by, what would the date be? Day before the February 7th. So if they don't comply by February 7th of 2021, a fine of $50 per day would be imposed for each day.
Okay, so what's on the screen in terms of the compliance date?
Yes, that would
Would
have
not be correct.
that would have been for this meeting from last
Yeah,
time. So that would be the February 7th instead.
right, okay. All right,
May I ask a couple of questions? Do you know if they have ever had a key to that elevator? Have you ever witnessed one?
I have not seen one personally. I would assume that they did, because like I said, it's a Medico brand key, which is a private company, so they would have had to purchase that key cylinder that would have come with a key to use it in the first place. I was not working for the city when those elevators were installed, so I don't know what happened to the key between installation and when we went out there. It's lost somewhere, I would assume.
I would agree. The property had a long history of code enforcement violations with the city, and they have previously been resolved, but the elevator working was a sticking issue prior to the prior code enforcement settlement arrangement, and I just find this interesting to hear today.
there have been prior code violations?
Many.
Not specific to the NFPA standards, but this property suffered from a fire, and the fire alarms went off, and the fire system was deactivated by the owner, which was a historical problem at this site.
Has the owner or the representative you've been dealing with, have they contested their responsibility for complying with NFPA 1-18.2 Fire Department Access or 72-14.2.1 Fire Alarm Servicing? Have they
No,
disputed that at all?
They know that it's required. I think that they just have possibly more on their plate than they had anticipated with the rebuild. One of the things that they've had to do is add a whole sprinkler system into the existing building, along with numerous plumbing and electrical, issues, rewiring things, replumbing things. So I think that they've just kind of forgotten about it, kind of push it off a little bit because they're trying to make the building habitable so they can start renting the units out, which they can't do until the fire alarm issues are addressed. So in the end, they would have to comply with it eventually. I think that they're kind of just trying to push it down the road.
Okay. I'll go ahead and find that based on the evidence and testimony, I'll accept the recommendation of the city. Compliance date of February 7, 2021. Impose a fine of $50 per day per violation. If compliance is not achieved by that date, impose administrative costs in the amount of $122. The fine considers the fact that these are health, safety, welfare issues, and seems like you've had prior code violations at this property. We just want to make absolute sure we get the correct code violations cited on our notices of violations. But because you do put the narrative on there and you do specify what you want them to do, I think it is okay, but just we want to be very careful that we put the correct.
Yes, I've already updated in our system, and I'm going to forward that on so that we can update it in the code enforcement software as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So we were also just going to go ahead and do 2103. That's also mine. So I've got the notice of violation hearing and the cost recovery.
Oh, the last page. Okay, got it.
All right, so
All right, let me go
this-
ahead and get this into the record here. This is Exhibit 1 will be the affidavit and notice of violation. And Exhibit 2 will be the affidavit and notice of hearing. And Exhibit 3 will be the cost recovery sheet in the amount of $157.22. Okay.
All right, so case 21-03 is going to be New Beginnings Ministry Worship Center, Inc. at 3659 South Hopkins Avenue, Suites E and F, Titusville, Florida 32780. Let's see, so the main violation for this business is Code of Ordinance Section 9-4, implied consent. All businesses in the city of Titusville are required to have one fire inspection each fiscal year, running from October 1st to September 30th. This business has not been responsive to the attempts to actually set up and gain access to that unit. Once contact was made, they actually called the code manager. I happened to be in the room and spoke to them. I called them back about an hour later. We set up an appointment, and when I showed up for that appointment, no one was there. I waited about 15, 20 minutes. No one showed up. I've had no contact with them since, either by phone or email, and that's kind of where we're at this point. The initial inspection was back July of last year, actually. I tried to get in contact with them. All the numbers that we had in our system were no good. The emails were no good, and they actually had no good business license at the time, so all the information we had on that side was also out of date. I sent the notice to the respondent on September 8th through certified mail, and it was signed on the 12th. They received the notice of hearing December 16th. It was posted at City Hall, the property, and certified mail. And the original date to comply was September 30th of 2020. They did end up attaining the BTR, so that violation was dropped off, just leaving the fire inspection requirement on there. So the follow-up inspections were the 30th of September, November 6th, December 11th, December 23rd, which was the day that we had scheduled, and no one actually showed up on site. So the implied consent code says any application for or acceptance of a permit requested or issued pursuant to this code constitutes agreement and consent by the person making the application or accepting the permit to allow the fire chief to enter the premises at any reasonable time to conduct the inspection as required by this code. The fire chief in Titusville delegates that to the fire marshal and the inspectors. So that would be the code that we would use to gain access to buildings to perform their annual fire inspections.
What's the permit application that?
The permit application would be the business license application. So any business that applies for a permit and is issued that permit understands that because of that BTR application and doing business in the city, they are required to have an annual fire inspection.
Okay, and you don't revoke their BTR if they don't get their fire inspection?
No, ma'am, they don't.
Okay.
So that was pretty much it based on the testimony presented in this case. New Beginnings Ministries Worship Center, Inc. are the owners of record of the property located at 3659 South Hopkins, Suite E and F. They're in possession or control of the property and in violation of TCO Section 9-4 as defined. We would order the respondent to correct the violation on or before February 8th of this year. And to do that, they just need to contact either myself or the other inspector to just set up a day that we can meet and go through the business to conduct the fire inspection. We ask that the administrative costs of $157.22 be assessed, and recommend that if they do not comply by 2/8/21, a fine of $50 per day should be imposed for each day the violation continues.
That's an interesting one.
Yeah, they're just never there. I don't know.
It seems like if that's a condition of a BTR license and they don't comply with that condition, then you should be able to revoke the BTR, but.
When they initially obtain the BTR for the first time, they are required to have a fire inspection before the BTR is issued. Everything after that is just, the fire fee is included in the BTR renewal. So, I mean, as far as I know, there's really no way to revoke a BTR like that. But at the time, they didn't have one anyway, so there would have been nothing to revoke. They did just renew the BTR, so there were several years where they didn't have one.
And there's not another code that requires them to have a fire inspection by, on a regular.
By a certain date, or the way that we do it is if the fiscal year passes, which due to COVID has been strange, but technically the fiscal year did end this past September 30th. So, we gave them a little extra time because of that, but it's more due to the complete lack of contact that, we've got to get in there. We're past that area. That's the only business I haven't been able to get into, so.
Counsel, I'm a little confused by this one. So the violation is section 9-4, any application for or acceptance of a permit requested or issued pursuant to this code constitutes an agreement, basically for a fire inspection. Does the city agree that this is the appropriate code for what
Based on the testimony, I would agree that this is applicable. I don't know that there would be another one that is better suited for this exact violation. I'm unfortunately not aware of one that would be better than this one because of the way that the city has designed the business tax receipt department to accept the fire inspection fee. This is, I think, the best tool that we have to accomplish this particular violation. If you are not satisfied, then I think that the only thing I could offer would be to continue it and do additional research on the history of this particular application for these types of cases to see where it's been used before. I'd be happy to do that if you'd be interested in that.
So just to clarify, just to make sure I've got the facts right, they applied for a business tax receipt, and that's how you're wanting the fire inspection, is because they applied for the business tax receipt. Because
in this instance, it's not a new issuance of the BTR. They simply renewed the expired one. On the renewal, as far as I'm aware, that's not what triggers the inspection. It's only on the issuance of a new business tax receipt. Everything after that, it's just based on that. It's just the requirement of the business to have a fire inspection. So they have to have one because they are a business operating in the city of Titusville, not necessarily because they just renewed the BTR this time.
But where does that say that in 9-4?
No, I can't see it now. Oh, there it is. Well, for the acceptance of, it says permit requested or issued pursuant to this code. The 9 would be the fire prevention section of the code. So they have been issued the business license. And since they are issued the business license, they agree and consent to have the fire chief enter the premises to conduct a fire inspection. And we have been unable to do that.
I don't dispute that. That seems like a reasonable thing to do. Just, maybe I'm not really understanding the facts as well. So you're saying that they had a BTR, it expired, and they renewed it, and that's what's triggering this?
Okay,
How often are you required to inspect a business?
annually.
And do you know when this business was last inspected for a fire inspection?
Last year. The 19-20 fiscal year.
And
18-19 fiscal
But
year.
what requires the annual inspection?
As far as I know, it's that. I mean, every business in Titusville is required to have a fire inspection. So,
But what's the code that requires the annual inspection? Because that would make perfect sense.
right. I mean, that's the only one that I've seen that, I mean, that is what gains us access to the businesses. So,
I think this gains you access.
I think it might be 9-12. The code that requires the yearly fee and inspection.
can we pull that up? I don't know.
However, they paid their fee, so that wouldn't apply in this case, you know?
True, and I mean, the main issue is that I cannot get access to the unit because either they don't return my phone calls, my emails, and they don't show up at the agreed upon time. So, I mean, the main issue is that I cannot gain access to the building or to the unit to conduct the inspection. So, I mean, it still applies whether it gives us the authority to do the annual inspection is, I agree, kind of ambiguous, but I do still need to get into the business to do the inspection. And this is what gives us the authority to enter the business.
Right. I agree. This gives you authority to enter premises. When,
perhaps it would be 9-11 under violations of this chapter. And it would be a violation of the person to fail to comply with section 9-4. But I think that just enumerates that it is a violation to not comply. In addition to the penalty, this particular section of violation gives the additional opportunity for the fire chief to remove or eliminate prohibited conditions. I don't know that that would apply here because this also includes a chapter on fire hazards. 2, have the building locked and/or sealed. Such buildings shall not be entered until the seal is removed by the fire chief. And 3, enjoin the business by court proceedings. So those are 3 tools under the violations section within this chapter.
can the city take another look at this and bring it back next month? Because I think it is a serious issue, and I want to make sure that it's cited correctly. I don't want to have any challenge
Right.
to it.
No, I agree. It's kind of,
I
yeah.
just in any kind of way, even though they're not here today, believe me, there's plenty of cases I've been involved with where people have challenged a finding even though they were not present at the hearing. So I just don't want any kind of challenge to ensue because it is, I think it's a very serious issue that
Right.
they get their fire inspections. So if the city could take another look at the cited violation and make sure that that's the best citation.
Yes, I'd be happy to.
Okay, thank you. So we'll just, I'm not gonna find it, I'm not gonna make any kind of finding, we'll just put this one on hold.
Sure. All right, thank you.
Or postpone it, or however you, I mean, we can just postpone this.
It'll just be the first one on the next month's hearing.
Postpone till next month. And if you need to, if it needs to be recited, then
Well, we'll-
then
yeah,
recite.
yes,
We'll notice the property as appropriate, and with the next scheduled case, 21-05, we would also like to continue to the February meeting.
So 2105 will be continued to February or as soon thereafter as possible.
the respondent asked for it to be continued because he couldn't get out of Canada because of COVID.
Oh, well, let's hope he can make it next month. All right, anything else from the city? Anything else?
That is all, ma'am.
All right,
Thank you.
we're adjourned.